Hello, everybody. I'm introducing Anne C. Murphy from Florida. I'm Tony Mitra in British Columbia, Canada. We spoke on Zoom a few days ago, and this one is to cover potential voter fraud in the coming US presidential election on November 4th, and why it is so critical, and why Supreme Court, why the justices, whoever is appointed in Supreme Court, suddenly becomes so critical, and why, from my point of view, no matter which country you live in, the election results in USA is likely to affect the entire planet. It is not just a matter of Americans, primarily because USA is the only military power that has the teeth to affect the rest of the world, and this is likely going to be a key factor for which the New World Order wants US military in its control, and therefore a president that is compliant to its wishes. Anyway, so on to Anne Murphy. She prefers Donald Trump, even I do, for not because he is the greatest guy, but he's definitely, in my assessment, not a stooge of the New World Order. That itself becomes, a winning combination. There are very, very few politicians left today who can say, who can look in the eye of the New World Order and refuse to play ball. So that, anyway, personal issues aside, Anne C. Murphy or myself, or I think any freedom-loving person, would not want an honest election, whichever way it goes, to be subverted by illegal means. So that is the main issue here. Go ahead, Anne.
Thank you, Tony. It's nice to be here. And yes, I've been a huge advocate about, really getting to the root of voter fraud in multiple elections. I worked for the Trump campaign and the DeSantis campaign, both from a marketing on the Trump side, and then for DeSantis more from a journalistic perspective. And I got to see, kind of more of an inside issue of what was really going on. And we're not just talking about people throwing away ballots here, voter fraud, that's kind of the stereotypical, aspect I think people think of, but I'm talking about more about people voting twice, how people get to polling locations, how the ballots are counted after the election, if the election's contested. And so when the MSM goes out and says there's no voter fraud, I mean, that makes me shake my head, not only from what I've seen based on my past experience, but Tony, you've mentioned that there's rampant fraud in Canada. I mean, this has been going on since Roman times in the senators. I mean, there is voter fraud, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I was born in India, where the fraud takes a different dimension. They literally steal the entire ballot box from booths and either burn it so it cannot be counted, or replace it with fraudulent ballots, or militia blocks normal people from going to the booth, and the booths are filled. The ballot boxes are filled with phony ballot. I mean, this kind of thing goes on almost horribly. But we don't expect this kind of things to happen in country like USA and Canada, who tout the election process and free and fair election, and government that is by the people and so on. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if people remember back in 2017, right after Trump was elected, one of the first things that he did was try to put together a commission to investigate fraud during the 2016 election. There was a ton of illegal immigrants that voted, et cetera, and he was completely shut down. I mean, one of the things you see in this country is you will just keep hitting a brick wall when you go to fight the deep state, and even the president of the United States doesn't necessarily have the power, to go over them. And I think, there are a lot of people who thought when Trump got into office, maybe there's a lot of that Q sentiment there that, he was going to be our savior and the deep state was going to go away immediately, but the deep state has not gone away. No. And the deep state has fought tooth and nail since 2000.
I feel that Trump, even if he wishes to fight the New World Order, or he refuses to toe the line, he is hemmed in. His hands and ties are feet, and he's surrounded even within his own party. And I mean, the infiltration of this cabal is unprecedented. It owns the military-industrial complex because money is to be made through artificial warmongering, and money is to be made by disenfranchising the people, money is to be made by toxifying the planet. Money is to be made for every wrong reason, and everybody's finger is in the pie one way or another.
Yeah, and I completely agree with it. And, like I've shared with you before, it's been frustrating because, I've been doing, investigative journalism, on this for several years and trying to report this to my media contacts. They won't publish this stuff.
No.
They can't do anything with it. They say, sorry. And then, you get an answer, like a day later in Snopes. Because a lot of these times, these pictures or these videos circulate through the conspiracy theory network, like I like to call it. But, you'll get a day later, it'll pop up, in Snopes and they'll completely debunk it, but they'll give it the craziest reasons why that doesn't make any sense. I know that several people in the through their community, Jordan Sather is one of them, is just, he gets taken so out of context, and the whole QAnon has been taken out of context within the MSM, so it's really hard, like I've said, to get any kind of voice about this.
Yeah, true. By the way, I was driving through Florida a few months ago, just before the lockdown was announced. I went there to watch birds on the seacoast, not necessarily to take care, to investigate what's going on politically. But nonetheless, go ahead. And by the way, if you want to share the screen, you can do so. And if the quality is not that good or something, you can also email me those images, and I can insert them at that slots in the video myself.
Yeah, I don't want to bore people with too much PowerPoint presentation slides, but I think it's really important, and the visuals are really important because it gives you an idea of what's going on. This came from Politico today, which is, a reasonably reputable source, and really kind of talks about this, split right now in terms of the votes. If you really look at the map, in terms of the Electoral College, you've got Biden right now with 226, Trump with 194. And something I'm going to talk about a little bit later is this, possible election night no call likely states, which a lot of them happen to be swing states. I wonder why that is. One of those coinky dinks. And there's several battles in state Supreme Courts going on right there. But I want to talk about why that's important, as well as kind of a tie-in from our last conversation. Anyhow, Biden is leading in the polls, and a definitive, and it's something even I can agree with on this one, I'd say by a margin now of 226 to 194 Trump in the Electoral College.
You say Trump is leading, but the figures say Biden is leading 226 by 194.
No, this is definite. What I'm talking about right now is the likelihood of error or margin of error on this one is so unlikely in either one's favor that I could say with a definitive that this is I would say a good number to go by right now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and this even came from mainstream. I'm agreeing with mainstream here on this one.
All right.
But the real thing that we're going to be looking at later is the gray areas, which is this no call likely and how long that timeline is going to last. But we came to talk about voter fraud, and I'm here to talk about voter fraud.
By the way, Anne, one question: what is the total electoral college total votes, and how many does a president need in order to win the election?
It's 270 to win the Electoral College. The total number just escapes me right now, but I'll get back to you.
So 270, if it wins it, twice 270 is 540. So that means the total seats are less than 540, maybe one or two less than 540. Therefore, 270 makes absolute 50% plus.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead.
Correct. It's the majority. Thank you. And why this is important is that right now there's no definitive, standout right now. Trump and Biden are reasonably close right now in what I'd like to call the definitive Electoral College.
All right.
And so a lot of things could happen from now until then.
So the numbers you showed in the previous screen, although Biden has more than Trump in that assessment, neither of them has reached the halfway mark. So there is a lot of uncounted ballot votes there that can swing and that can decide who eventually wins.
Exactly. And I'm going to break down that more later in another slide, but I really wanted to get into the voter fraud aspect.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
But this is the main point. We're talking about there's zero election fraud. It's like, I just pulled some articles like that have happened like within the past month, and something recently came in today that was actually a prank, but the GOP out in California were putting out fake ballot drop-off boxes. But yeah, I mean, there were 58,000 ballots that were undelivered in Pennsylvania. I mean, this is just something I found. Here we go. Sorry about that. Here was something I found on Twitter from one of my journalist buddies. I mean, where they're finding ballots left and right. They're going to the wrong people. They're becoming undelivered. They're ending up in the trash. People are deliberately throwing them away. So, from an election that could have been decided by 40,000 votes back in 2016, that's one statistic. You got to drill all these statistics, and there's so many. Back in 2016 with the Clinton election, I mean, that was lost by 40,000 votes. So, I mean, these votes are really important, and 58,000 ballots go undelivered. And then, I was, talking about, we have even more fraud that I have a video of, and, other stuff. And it's like, well, this is a lot. This is a big number right here, 40,000. That could, 10,000 could swing an election, especially if it comes down to a swing state. And if a swing state is, not necessarily, GOP aligned within, the whole state legislature system, and you've got this kind of stuff going on. I mean, there's no way to prove it. I mean, there's terrible consequences to all of this.
Okay, just break it down one sec. And for non-Americans, the way the leader is decided in USA as compared to, let's say, in Canada or India or UK, is that in these countries, not USA, one does not directly elect the leader. They only elect the so-called local representatives like senators, and number of senators depends on the population of the country. And then eventually these senators who are elected by the people, they get together and vote who they like to have a leader as a leader, and whichever person gets maximum votes, usually based on parties, then that person becomes the prime minister and so on. This is the system elsewhere. So I may like Trudeau or do not like Trudeau. I have nothing to do with voting for him, because a person standing in my riding, in my neighborhood, is not Trudeau. Is a local guy, and I can support his party, or I can vote for some other party, or neutral or independent, whatever. I have no direct influence, no direct one, only indirect one on who gets to be the leader. Now, in USA, there's a kind of a peculiar mix. The president directly stands for election before the people, and every person casts a ballot for or against one person, or in this case, Trump or Biden. However, the total number of votes are not tallied and just simply counted who gets more than the other in the entire population count of the state of the country, but it is broken down state-wise, every state, and then every state, whoever wins the state, even by one vote, the number of seats from that state, which is called the electoral college, which is somewhat similar to, say, depending on the population of the state, similar to how many senators would go be elected from there. So entire electoral college, all of them are given to the person who wins the majority. So for instance, if a very big state, which has, say, 30 electoral college votes or 40 electoral college votes or 10, whatever, and if it is split down the middle and one person wins it by one vote of the people, just one vote, all the 40 would go to the president. This system was, I suspect, designed to ensure that smaller states become as critical as possible, proportionately as critical to win as the bigger states, and therefore the candidates would canvass there as well, because if they lose by 1 or 2 votes and lose the entire state because of that, and a number of swing states can swing the election. So basically the contenders are forced to go to every state, and the state also has a reasonably higher say. Even smaller states have a reasonably prominent say in the selection process of the of the president. I suspect this was one of the reasons why it is so. Almost no other country has this kind of a system. So this is what she's talking about, and this is where I was in Florida in year 2000, where Florida has some 20 odd seats, and the election was hanging in balance because both of them were so close that whoever got the entire number of electoral college votes from Florida would win the presidency. And in Florida, the count was down the wire, just a matter of few hundred out of many million. And there was voter fraud involved in the sense that knowingly or unknowingly people cast votes at the wrong candidate, and the people who like to vote for Al Gore ended up voting for some marginal candidates who had no chance of winning because of the design of the ballot. The ballot design is also depends on every place. It is not standardized. So some places had a peculiar kind of a design where older generation, they were not familiar with it. They made a mistake and gave it to the wrong guy, thousands of votes. So if you, and some of them you press it with your pencil or something, but it did not tear off that small piece and it became sort of hanging but not torn off or bulging out. So they were called pregnant chat. So they were not counted and all these things. So therefore it was recounting going on, and the way it was going is that Al Gore was slowly gaining, and if the entire count was done manually, recount was done manually, it is quite possible that Al Gore would have won the entire state by a few hundred votes and therefore would have won the presidency. But the counting, manual recounting, was stopped at the Supreme Court on demand of the Bush campaign team, and the Supreme Court voted to stop the recounting and leave it exactly what it is, and thereby Bush won the election. And this is why, as Anne Murphy is saying, the Supreme Court becomes important, and the Supreme Court voted not on logic, according to me, because how can you not allow recounting? What harm it? Okay, it takes 7 days more, but it's an election of the U.S. Presidency. It's not a joking matter. So what harm can it be done if it is manually recounted? But they stopped it. And possibly the decision was made on political grounds, that more people in the Supreme Court were pro-Republican or pro-Bush or something. And whether you're Republican or not Republican, you don't want your election to be, fraud to be used or unjustly, decided. So this is critical. And I just wanted to clear it out for those who don't understand the U.S. electoral system. I was living in Florida at that time. Go ahead, and sorry for taking that time.
Oh no, I think it's really important information. I mean, it's kind of funny because when most countries get their election results in on the TV, it's like 1 million to 900,000, and all night it's like some sort of game show where all these states come in and the numbers go up and all these bells are ringing, and it's kind of it's a little bit absurd actually. But yeah, there's a lot more to it in that. And actually, I mean, coming from somebody, unfortunately, from a conservative perspective, if they took away our demographics, because most of the conservative population lives in middle America, lives within the heart of our country, not on the coastlines, and that's where more of the Democratic contingent is concentrated in. And if we based this nation just based on popular vote, I mean, we would never win. That's, I mean, whether or not that's right or wrong, when one can debate that from many angles, but that is part of the problem, just from that perspective, even so. But I guess in terms of voter fraud, I mean, from the conspiracy theory 411, one of my favorite stories that came up was this ballot fraud in Sonoma County, where physical ballots, you can see the markings, right, and I've circled the stamp right there, all election, all early voting, and they were found in a dumpster. And of course, when you start to report like stuff like this from a journalistic perspective, you're going to get Snopes. And the county went on record, see in the bottom here, saying they were dumped there. Those are from 2018. It was from a while ago. But then if you look at the newspaper, you see it was from 2020 and September 18th. So, you know, it's like we have proof of stamped election ballots, thousands of them, all for Trump. We're trying to get this story out in the news, and then you just you hit a wall again. You can't get any of this stuff out. So, you know, this is just one of the many instances where, you know, we've spotted stuff. You can, you know, take pictures and, you know, try to, you know, piece together the story. You try to send it to news outlets, and it never gets reported, and then you get fact checked. So, you know, in terms of this, I was showing you the video I sent you this about a week ago, where this guy found a ton of voter registration from a Republican committee in a dumpster from R.R. Donnelly, and the MSM one on record saying it was, you know, it was just unsolicited junk mail. But, you know, the problem is that, you know, junk mail comes individually. You get it received at your house, and then it gets thrown in the trash. This was all mailed to, delivered, and then discarded. You know, and it's like PolitiFact said this is false, and they have this cockamamie theory of why this isn't true, and it just, you know, it never makes sense. And, you know, that's part of the problem. There's a lot of these things never make sense. You go to report them, nothing happens, and, you know, all we can do is do, you know, things like you do. You know, you write letters, you try to get on podcasts, you tell people about this stuff. You know, I've tried to get out there and tell as many people about all this crazy fraud that's going on, to have them double check their vote. You know, there's ways that you know, in certain states, and ways you can kind of confirm this. And, you know, there's people who police the polls. There's lots of ways from a grassroots perspective that, you know, you can really, you know, help with this. Now, one of the theories that's going around right now on Twitter, I can't confirm or deny whether it's true, but it makes a lot of sense. You know, is this voter registration and the mail sort machines connected? You know, maybe that's a possible explanation of why these ballots for Trump, or this mail for Trump, it all happens to be Trump-based, is just disappearing right now. And it's really interesting because Trump hired a new Postmaster General back in April. And it's almost like, you know, he's been planning this. There's been an interesting timeline of Trump since he's been in office, from his new appointment of the cabinet of the post office, you know, has its own executive committee. And he got to elect the entire board, which is the first time unheard of for a president. But he went in to start, you know, cleaning up elections back 3 years ago. And about 5 months ago.
Are you saying that Trump appointed a new Postmaster General who in turn appointed his entire subordinate team?
No, he actually it was the opposite. He had the subordinate team in place, and then about 5 months ago, he hires Louis DeJoy out of nowhere. And typically, Postmaster Generals have had more of a connection to the Democratic Party in terms of fundraising. You can look back in the archives, and here's something on the bottom here. This just came out in the news today. He's donated nearly $700,000 to Trump's new convention. He definitely has ties to Trump. He's a Republican. He openly favors Trump. He was appointed by Trump. So, I mean, this is kind of good news for conservatives who are, you know, either looking at, you know, fair elections or.
So this $700,000 came from his pocket, or he used the mail system to sort of advertise it among the Americans and collected
well,
it?
it's typically how it runs here, is that you can't be a personal donor of a significant dollar amount. That's against the law, but it's like contributions to super PACs, and, you know, there's ways around it in the political system.
I see. Okay. All right.
But, you know, I mean, one of the interesting things that happened back in early August is that they decommissioned 671 of these delivery barcode sorters, these mail sorting machines, and it was about 13% of the machines that read election mail. And I just thought that, you know, kind of was interesting out of nowhere. If you see how many that they've decommissioned over the past few years, I mean, that number is quite significant. One of the other kind of theories on this is that this was done to slow down processing, you know, I mean, which could be a key factor during the election. And I'll tell something right now, the Supreme Court in a lot of our individual states right now, and a lot of individual swing states, have, you know, potential cases coming up that will directly either influence through appeal or through verdict whether or not there's going to be an extension on them counting ballots. Now, why is this significantly important? This is significantly important because 2/3 of Joe Biden's base is actually going to be voting by mail, whereas the flip side, the opposite is true for Trump. So in terms of,
So let us say,
yeah, this is a really interesting point to talk about, by the way.
so on the day of the election, according to what he just said, a lot many more Trump supporters are likely to go to the booth and cast their ballot on the spot personally, compared to a lot of the Biden supporters are likely to mail in, not necessarily that day, maybe many days before that, but you can only mail up to that day. You cannot do it next day. So then for the next so many days, the final result is not out because the mail-in ballots are still being counted. And while they count, they're supposed to see the postmark and make sure that they were all posted before or up to the election date and not after. And this takes many days. So therefore, if there is insufficient time given to count, or there is problems in counting, or the mail cannot be found, or whatever, all those problems, then Biden is likely to suffer more than Trump. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because if here, and I have this, I can talk about this a little bit later, but
Tell us why. Why are the Trump people deciding to go personally and Biden people deciding to mail? Why?
You know what? I mean, I have my own theory on this. I have absolutely no plausible explanation other than this. I mean, so many people here in the U.S. are very anti-establishment. That's why they support Trump. They love him. They think he's a refreshment. And a lot of these people tend to be a lot more cautious that the government is there to do good for them, like give them vaccines and, trust that they should wear face masks forever in public, even though the WHO has just said otherwise. We should stop these lockdowns and, just get all this information. And, I'm not saying that all Democrats aren't woke and all Republicans, none of that, but I'm just saying, like, I see more of a split. Maybe that has something to do with it. They're more fearful and more distrustful of the system. That, I think that has a lot to do with it personally.
You mean about the Trump supporters going personally? They don't trust the mail system.
No, they don't trust the mail system. No. I mean, it just took me 2 weeks to get a package that should have taken me 2 days. And this is a rampant problem in this country right now. And since DeJoy has commissioned some of these.
What is the problem? Is it go slow, or is it inefficiency, or it is purposefully delaying, or what is the problem?
I think DeJoy is purposely delaying the mail process so the election is in favor of Trump. I'm not going to lie to you. Whether or not that's a dirty tactic, I really do believe that's what's going on. I mean, all roads lead to Rome on this one.
Huh.
I mean, he had budgetary cuts.
I can understand Trump people not trusting the mail system, but in any case, if COVID was not around and all this craziness was not around, people are by and large supposed to go and vote in person. The only people who are supposed to mail in are those that are outstationed. They cannot go to the polling way. They're abroad, or they are somewhere where they cannot go to the poll booth, and therefore they mail in. Not ordinary guys living at home. They're not supposed to mail in. They're supposed to go. So what changes now? Why is Biden supporters overwhelmingly preferring to mail in instead of go in themselves? Fear of COVID or what?
I think it's a fear of COVID. I mean, COVID is the dog ate my homework. It's like, we can't vote at the polls. It's like because of COVID, everything's because of COVID now. And the Democrats are manipulating that excuse. They're even saying, I think they're going to, potentially escalate or, do something right before election to just pump up some sort of, mass pandemic number to scare people away from the polls. Who knows what those people are capable of?
Okay, why? What is their point of other than making people more afraid of COVID and making them more subversive to illogical or unproven scientific dictates or directives? Other than that, what is the purpose? Do they want to purposefully create some mischief regarding the mail, which they cannot do if it is direct ballot, in order to hope to win in, sort of unethically, or there is some way to influence the election count through unsavory means? Why should they want more people to cast their ballot by mail?
I mean, why were the Democrats? Because they have more control over the process. I mean, you know, we were talking about earlier in our conversation about how it's, you know, government is influenced sometimes inside out. I know, like at a
No, but what is
like,
the advantage for
no, let me
democracy?
talk about this though for a second, because even at the city and local level, I mean, if this comes down to voter counting, I mean, it might come down to the county commissioner. That might come down to the entire vote in the entire country. And when you have a base, you know, like in Florida, we have a Republican governor, we have Republican senators, we have a Republican House, and yet all of our local communities are all run democratically, and a lot of the election commissioners are all part of these democratic, you know, counties. I mean, we don't have as much control over the process as you think we do, and that was my point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to get my wrap my head around what is the advantage of either party to have more votes coming in by mail. What is the advantage? What do they intend to do with it?
Well, I mean,
The
I think it
disadvantages
could
we
be
already know. We already
I
know
think
the
it could be
disadvantage.
useful. I mean, if you know that more of your voting base is going to vote by mail, then, you know, you're going to sit in, you know, some sort of think tank committee and say, okay, if we run into a stalemate and if after November 3rd on election night, no winner, we're going to have more basis for our lawsuits now, especially, you know, so I think, you know, they could be planning on, well, what are we going to do if it goes to that sort of thing? I mean, that's my thoughts on it.
So that means they're hoping to win it more through legal action or through anarchy or through street protest than by actual vote counting. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, and I consider anybody to look up the Transitions Integrity Project. It's called TIP. I talked about it in our last talk. It was just what I was talking about. There's been an entire Democratic committee full of all our favorite swamp monsters that have been going over exercises of what happens if no winners declared on November 3rd, and then Trump tries to declare through the Supreme Court. All these different scenarios that are going to happen and play out. So.
All right.
You know, I think that's why that's important.
Okay, move on.
Hold on, I'm gonna move this over. You know, but the thing is that we don't have an undecided winner, and this is new data that just came out today with Trump now leading in Florida. The likelihood of Biden outright winning the election with 270 electoral college votes is just not possible. So. In terms of, you know, Team Trump, I think that's really encouraging news because, you know, Florida with 29 is, you know, really going to give Trump an edge with him going through it. I took those current numbers from earlier, the 226 and the 194, and I just added it if Trump won Florida and Biden wins Arizona, which I think personally is up in the air. But let's just say he wins Arizona. We pretty much have a neck and neck race here. But the differential here is that Florida and Arizona both have this thing called probable election calls, which means they have stop dates in place from when they're counting their votes, unlike states like Michigan and Wisconsin that are given up to 10 days to count the vote. And these are swing states, by the way. So, you know, why I did this math here and put together my little nerdy chart for everybody to see is I think that there's going to be states with no election night calls. So the likelihood I would say now is about a 99% certainty that we are not going to have an election winner on election night. And we are going to go through the process of what you saw in 2000, potentially, of them scrambling for votes and trying to figure out, is this in a secondary envelope? Does this signature match? And this, you know, and is this state going to appeal through the Supreme Court voting legislation that was enacted, you know, prior to people casting early votes? All this nonsense going to start happening. So this is why I think it's really important to see. Sorry, allergies a little bit. Darn ragweed. No, it's really important to see. I don't think that it's probable at all that Biden wins during election night, unless through some snake act he wins Florida. But I just don't see it happening. But I just wanted to go on to the next.
So the election night, we will not have a clear winner and it will drag on.
Yeah, it's going to drag on. Yeah, just for this next slide real quick. talking about reset deadlines. I mean, this is going up to November 17th. That's insane. You know, we have three big swing states here. I won't spend too much time, but Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are, you know, absolutely critical in terms of determining the winner of this election. Pennsylvania is not going to have a finished count until November 6th, Wisconsin not until November 9th, and Michigan not until, so this could drag on to November 17th and even longer if the vote's close enough, just so people are aware.
So, okay, go on.
But no, this is just a little point of interest. I mean, at this point in time, at this, you know, date, you know, Clinton was ahead in Wisconsin by 6, about the same margin that Biden is right now. And then Trump ended up winning in Wisconsin. So, you know, in terms of the polls and swing states being accurate, I'm not real sure. You know, I just wanted to, you know, talk about, there's a few things in potentially going to the U.S. Supreme Court right now. One in North Carolina saying that they changed the rules midway about when you can count elections and they want this appealed. And, you know, there's several other, and I think Pennsylvania right now, Pennsylvania is trying to extend the registration stamp deadline, and that, I think, decision is going to be announced really soon. But, you know, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. I kind of summarized this. I grabbed this, you know, because, you know, what I really think, you know, you going back to the whole Bush-Gore aspect is, I think that this is going to come down to a couple swing states, and I think that this is going to come down to a contested election. Now, you know, what role does the Supreme Court play in all of that? You know, I think is incredibly important, because ultimately, like, we have that state Supreme Court case in Pennsylvania. That's the first case, I think, on the docket to be heard by the Supreme Court in its coming session, that's specific to whether or not Pennsylvania can extend its voting deadline. So if any of this crazy stuff starts happening into election, it's all going to funnel right up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay. So then I suppose you're saying that it will end up, it can only go to Supreme Court if somebody takes the matter to the court. It will not automatically go to the Supreme Court. So
no, it has to go through a state Supreme Court. So, you know, let's say Trump could file against the state of Michigan.
One of the two parties, one of the two teams have to take the election process to the Supreme Court, saying this is not fair, so and so needs to be done. Correct or not?
Yeah, that's correct.
So either the Biden team or the Trump team or both will have to go to court to challenge whatever was going on, and thus it lands up in the local court. And if that decision is not liked by the losing party, then it can be taken to a higher court, such as the Supreme Court. So
yeah, exactly. And you know, we know back in 2000, you know, it ultimately got struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Florida Supreme Court order stood. So, you know, it's important to understand, like you said, about how the Electoral College works, and how this, like you said, decision might ultimately come down to the state Supreme Court and then to the Supreme Court, which is why you see this rush to get Barrett confirmed, and why they're, you know, I saw some of the hearings today. It was not good. It's a sludge match in there right now. But yes, I think it is, like, going back, even, you know, what we talked about before, the most important critical aspect of Trump winning this election is getting Barrett.
So what are the chances of Trump's selection of the vacant seat at the Supreme Court? That it was a lady, I suppose. What are the chances? She's been accepted or not yet accepted? Is going to drag on past the election time, or what?
I think they might drag it on, but they're rushing to confirm her right now. I mean, they're doing everything. I mean, that is their hope to, you know, stay in power, you know, based on, you know, a lot of this information we've been talking about. I mean, it makes a lot of sense why there's this incredible rush and then, you know, the media is reporting, you know, Ginsburg doesn't want Trump to pick, and all this nonsense about that. I mean, it's just, I mean, they're really fueling the fire right now, trying to get that turning. But I think she will be confirmed. And I think there's a reason why Trump was once quoted saying, "I'm saving her for last," because she is the best and she has the cleanest record.
Okay.
I mean, what are they going after her right now? She's a Catholic. I mean, that just keeps coming up. I mean,
That's
And
stupid.
but yet that we don't have a problem with people of other religions that talk about their religion in our government. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a bunch of them. I mean, it's hypocrisy is the new American way in government.
Oh, that's stupid. Anyway,
Exactly. I'm gonna stop sharing.
yeah, and
I hope that was interesting to people. I think getting the numbers down on paper is really helpful for people to see like really what's going on now, as opposed to trying to grab everything, because there's just so much information out there right now.
right. So the subject was election fraud or possible election fraud. Tell us again in a summary or briefly, how is this? What kind of fraud and how is this likely to happen? In a brief.
It happens, see, the problem is it happens on so many levels, like locally, like, from a state level in terms of, corruption from a Supreme Court perspective. I mean, there's so many dimensions and facets to this. I don't necessarily think it could be contained in a summary. What I will say,
Okay, let's break it down to some simple things. Could it be that some people who are supporters of the wrong candidate uh, cannot mail because of some difficulty thrown in their path, or their votes will not be counted? That is one kind of fraud. Do you think that might happen?
I think it's possible. I mean, I know what happened back in 2018 in Florida when they were rushing to do the recount during the gubernatorial election. I mean, Trump talked about it in a speech. I can show you later. I mean, he said he was part of what stopped that from happening. He finally put his foot down and they stopped the ballot count. I mean, there
Oh,
are ballots.
what was it
There are
not happening?
ballot. We found there were videos of ballots not going away in electoral supervisor labeled cars that were going away in U-Haul vans and rental cars, and in boxes and boxes of ballots were just disappearing from election
And
sites.
those ballots were expected to be favoring one particular candidate. If it is
Yeah,
equally,
well,
then
here's the thing:
it doesn't make difference.
if you can take 10,000 or 5,000 or 2,000 ballots from a location and move them somewhere else and remove or shift even from a margin of error point of 10 to 15%, you can influence election quite a big deal.
Okay, and that's one thing wrong. The people do not get their honest votes counted. Is there any other?
The Florida gubernatorial story is fascinating. There's not a lot of hard research out of it, but if people really want to see election fraud at its best, I mean, that was probably the most insane example of it I've ever witnessed through my political career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they blatantly took ballots away, and there was, reports from a woman in West Palm Beach of seeing a room full of people filling out ballots. Now, this was after Election Day. She said there was a conference table full of people. She went on record, sent it to the county commissioner's office in West Palm Beach, and said that she saw people writing out ballots, and literally 2 hours later, the election was called. It's a very interesting story not a lot of people know about.
Okay. Any last words? We are gone 40 minutes plus.
No, I just want to say, this is important information to get out. And, in terms of people, I think, being, fearful of this happening or that happening. I think there's a lot of things that have been thought out, and I have confidence that,
Any advice to the voters? According to me, they should go personally, forget the mail, and cast their vote, and make sure there is no hanging or
vote in person.
They make sure they mark the ballot absolutely accurately. But any other suggestion?
Well, if you see any evidence of voter fraud or you see any suspicious activity, this is important to capture on camera and videotape, and, go to your local conspiracy theorist, and we'll probably be on the wire.
Is there an official channel where you can report election fraud?
I would tag Jordan Sather at Destroying the Illusion, or 3 days and 3 nights on Twitter.
But isn't there an official channel to complain? There must be.
Oh, it's a lot better getting it out in alternative news outlets.
Oh, I see.
InfoWars is another source. Mike Adams, they all like that sort of thing. And you can go to any of these sites and submit videos. I mean, obviously, in the likelihood that you're going to catch something like that is very, very slim. But there's something called voter tracks. 25% of the states have registered, where you can go in and actually see if your vote's counted. I think it uses some form of blockchain that hasn't been implemented nationwide, but people can go check their vote as well in certain states. But
Right.
unfortunately, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do but sit for, November and December and, get our popcorn out and wait.
All right then. Thanks a lot. And unless you have something else to say.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Just rock the vote, and it's nice talking to you.
You personally
We have to
prefer.
talk about Indian food one day. I love Indian food. I make
All right,
Indian.
we'll do.
All
You
right,
personally
sounds good.
prefer Donald Trump to win, and I prefer Donald Trump to win simply because I think the world is facing an unprecedented crisis. And while Donald Trump might be old or might be, idiosyncratic or many other oddities, I believe the reason he is so hated by the mainstream media is not because of his faults, but because he refused to play ball and toe the line with the New World Order, which controls all the other avenues except the US military, all the avenues such as banking, such as media, such as newspapers, such as public opinion, manufacturing machines. They try to, that's my assessment, they try to demonize Trump not because of Trump's fault, but because Trump does not want to play ball. And by that count, to me, it becomes important that he wins instead of somebody who is a lapdog of the New World Order. Apart from losing his mind, that's what I understand Biden is doing.
I'm more worried. I don't think Biden's going to win. I think Harris is they're going to use the 25th Amendment, and she's going to take Hillary and drag up all of the swamp and put him back in the cabinet. I mean, I'm scared.
Could be. She looks, I don't know much about her, but she smells she smells like a crook.
She smells like a rat.
Yeah, correct. She smells like a crook.
If it looks like a rat, it talks like a rat.
Yeah, all right.
All right. It's nice chatting with you, Tony.
Yeah, take care. We'll stay in touch.
Take care. Okay.
Bye. All the best. Bye.